Would you like to absorb years of experience in only a couple of hours for the price of a few picks? Well, it's easy. All you got to do is, well, stick around. I'll show you. All right, guys, this is it. The third edition of the visual guide to lockpicking. Just picked this up, and I got to tell you right up front, this is probably the best investment you can make in your lockpicking education that I have ever run into. It is 187 pages, packed full of information about everything from the most simple of locks all the way to some of the more obscure stuff. A lot of experience was put into this book. I've tabbed a few things that I think are critical, but I'll tell you, in order to successfully pick a lock, you really need to know what's inside of the lock. How does it work? What kind of parts are your picks interacting with, and what kind of picks should you be using? And that's never been more apparent than in the very first chapter here. I can't tell you how many guys I get that send me emails saying, I got this piece of crap lock. I can't get anything from it. I can't even feel the pins. I'm sending it to you. And they do. And then when I open the package, it's a warded lock. There are no pins inside of it. And if they had just read through these first couple of pages, they would have been able to figure that out themselves and save the cost of the lock and shipping it to me. All the chapters are laid out kind of the same when they describe locks. They talk about identification features. In this case, we got a restrictor plate and how does it fit into the door. And then we talk about, identifying it with the key. How does the key fit past the restrictor plate to engage in the wards? And there's a three-dimensional rotation of the key showing the interaction between the key, the warding, and the restrictor plate to activate the mechanism. That's really what we need to know. If they had known that, they could have saved themselves a lot of money. The author and the illustrator even went to the trouble to talk about how does the shackle work. It's not really relevant to picking, but it's kind of neat to know how everything ties together and why the shackle doesn't just spring out every time we turn the key to open the lock. So the easiest, most common lock, very first chapter. And of course, we jumped into the second chapter on page 26, which is pin tumblers. For those of you guys who are really into terminology, right here on the first page of pin tumblers is the preponderance of all the terminology you'll need. Tied to the individual, we got a front view and a side view and the individual components on the inside with the pin showing you, or with the terminology pointing to the front and the side to show you how it's all arrayed inside of the lock. Very cool. He talks about rotating core, how do the pin and the key pin interact with each other, what happens when you shove a key inside of there, how does it raise the key pins to the right level to give you an alignment at the shear line. The illustrator went to a lot of trouble here. Then, of course, he talks about, okay, there's how it works, there's all the components, how do we beat it? He shows you what tools you're going to need, and in my view, tensioners are probably some of the most important things, but he also goes into the picks, their names, and what each of those picks are used for, what type of locks, and what type of defeats can you expect. He breaks them down by hooks and, extractors and curve picks. Just really well done. Keyless entry, how do they all tie together to get yourself an open? He talks about the different techniques, raking, single pin picking, just really, really a lot of detail goes into that. And then he gives you some exercises. All right, flipping ahead, he does talk about bypasses, which everybody's interested in, to include me. He talks about shimming, again, with the cutaway showing you how the shim interrupts the actuator and basically slides between the actuator and the locking notch on the shackle. Again, one quick view. Man, I got it. I know exactly what he's talking about. Shows you how to rotate it in to get it to work, what the different shims look like in case you're interested in making some of your own. He'll jump into recoil of pins and why that happens, and then he jumps and starts to explain, well, if you got the recoil, there are tools that'll help you exploit that. We got a snapper gun, we got electropick, and then he calls them bounce keys, but they're bump keys or 999 keys. He talks about how they work, why they work, and how to make them. Very cool stuff, a lot of detail. We jump into high security pins. Now, to me, this is really valuable because he not only shows you a picture of the high security pins, but he shows you how those pins will react inside of the chamber when you get a false set, which will help you identify what kind of pin it is that you're dealing with. So here we have a mushroom pin. Over here we have spool. And he even gets into serrated pins and how you know they're caught up or binding in the shear line. He talks about tubular locks, a complete chapter on those. And I have never successfully been able to machine open a tubular lock, but now with this picture, you don't have to. Again, with the terminology, and it's basically a pin tumbler lock arranged in a circle. We have driver pins, key pins, and then, of course, we have the key interacting with the key pins to align everything right there at that circular shear line. Once you know how it works, how to identify some of the features by the keyway, how do you tension it based on the type of lock that you're going to be facing. Is it interior tensioning, exterior tensioning? Is it 7-pin versus 8-pin or some other hybrid? He tells you how to identify all of those. And then he introduces our favorite tool, the tubular lock impressioning tool. Mine's by Southord. He shows you how to start out by aligning all of the impression needles. And then he shows you how to put it in there, how to rotate it, and basically impression the key to get an open. A lot of little tricks inside of there. A lot of cutaways showing you how it works and why it works. And then he goes on to talk about, well, you don't have to have an impressioning tool. You can pick these things by hand. And he shows you how to tension them, the different tensioning tools, and how you are able to do that, how you're able to single pin pick a step at a time, but eventually you'd be able to pick inside of there. After tubular locks, he jumps into lever lock, something true to my own heart. I wish I'd had this about a year and a half ago when I really got involved in lever locks. It could have saved me a lot of pain from trial and error. He starts out with the most basic of lever locks. How does it work? And then he shows you how the key interacts with a single lever. And then he increases the level of complexity to show you we got face plates, we got trunnions, we got different type of levers and spacers. Shows you the keys and then shows you how everything starts to tie together on the inside of the lock itself. If you're interested in picking it, he goes into what do the picks look like? How can you make them yourself in order to fit into the keyways properly? And he starts talking about master keying and some of the more complex issues. He even talks in here somewhere about the different types of false sets. We have serrated. I can't remember where we are. Here we have serrated lever. We have false notches. Really a lot of detail. And the last one we jump into are combination locks. I'm not a combination lock kind of guy, but I went through this chapter trying to figure out exactly what it was he was talking about. I was using a couple of master locks. And as it happened, I had both a 10-tooth and a 12-tooth lock. So I was able to check everything he was talking about. Again, with the identification features and the internal mechanism. Very basic. How does the locking pawl interact with the wheel? And what's the gate notch? And very simple illustration. And then he slowly but surely starts to complicate things by putting in false notches or false gates. He starts talking about how you identify those false gates. And more importantly, you can count the false gates, how multiple wheels interact with each other. And if you rotate the lock too many times, he talks about how the reset wheels interlock with each other and reset the lock. So really interesting stuff. He takes it step by step. Walk me through it, and believe me, if I can learn it, anybody can learn it. Talks about the locking pawls, and this is the key, cracking combination locks. Following these instructions, he goes into some mathematical analysis, and I kind of walk through that, but you don't have to. I'll tell you the secret to this. You count the gates. Once you know you have a 10-gate lock, you flip over to basically the Decrypt tables right here. And these alone make it worth the price of the book. Once you find the Decrypt numbers and it tells you how to find your first number, he tells you mathematically what are your most likely second numbers and third numbers. And using these tables and the techniques in here, you can very quickly decode a 10-gate lock, and I did it on a 12-gate. It took a little bit longer because there are more possible gates, but there's your Decrypt table for 12-gate locks as well. A lot of information jam-packed in here. I've been doing this a long time, and I learned a lot going through here just to do this review. I am very impressed with this third edition of the Visual Guide to Lockpicking. I went to a public school, so anything with visual stuff, I learn it a lot faster. It truly is the best $25 you can invest in your lockpicking education. I can't recommend this highly enough. So the weekend giveaway, of course, you're going to get my book. I'll leave all the tabs on there for you. And since it's only $25, I am going to sweeten up the giveaway a little bit. I'm going to throw in one of these, the new Lock Lab pinning trays that I designed and have been cutting out on the CNC machine here in the Lock Lab. And just like the ones I've listed on eBay, this one's also autographed. Not so that I can take credit, but so that you know who to blame when things go wrong. Appreciate your time, guys. Stay safe. Stay legal. All you need to do is navigate to locklab.com, the tribal website, and scroll down in the middle of the page. You'll see all the giveaway buttons, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But the one you're looking for is the Weekend Review Giveaway, purple band. Just click on it. It'll take you to the registration page. Again, scroll to the bottom, put in a good email address, so if you win, I can get in touch with you, let you know. Put in a username, doesn't matter what it is, and click Submit. When you're done, you'll get a green check mark confirming your entry. Thanks, guys.